Thank you for that. Thank you for having us here this morning. It's very good to be here. I'm excited to bring something of missions from our perspective from Ethnos, New Zealand. We are part of a global organisation that is all about establishing a thriving church for every people. The ethnos is the Greek word that's been translated throughout the New Testament, and we have it as nations, peoples, Gentiles, and heathen. It's where we get our English word ethnic from. For our first 75 years, we were known as New Tribes Mission, with the classic look of our founding works amongst the jungle tribal people of the world. And today they are still our core focus. And you can get a really good idea of what this work looks like in our latest video, God at Work. You can see a link for it there, and we also have cards for this to make it easy. You don't have to remember. Grab one of those cards off our table at the back, and you can watch that. It gives you a really good idea of what we're all about. You'll also see some other material there. We also work amongst many other ethnic people groups that otherwise have no opportunity to hear the gospel. The ethnos of the world are as varied as the places that they are found, and that just gives you a bit of an idea of some of what God has our organisation working amongst. In recent years, God has drawn some of our missionaries to work amongst people that are isolated by their language and culture, who may be living in like a crowded city setting. This brings a lot of new challenges for us as an organisation, because this is very different from what our founding works looked like. Now, we could say that that is a very similar challenge to what somebody in the local church would face if they were to go out overseas into full-time missions. So this morning, let's be challenged together as we first of all go to the city of Bangkok.
In the streets of every village, every city's soaring tower, empty people live in darkness, every minute, every hour. Hear the cry of desperation from a billion broken hearts, with a need so great, where do we even start? Let it start with me. Open up my eyes, fill my heart with your compassion, free my mind from all distractions, use my hands to set the captive free, move my feet to follow after you, Lord, change the world and let it start with me. You've given us the orders, there's a place for everyone. I don't want to miss my mission in the plan that you've begun. You've promised to go with me to the edges of it all, and change everything that keeps me from your call. Let it start with me. Open up my eyes, fill my heart with your compassion, free my mind from all distractions, use my hands to set the captive free, move my feet to follow after you, Lord, change the world and let it start with me. Take my life, all that I have called my own, everything I am is yours alone. Let it start with me.
That song get to you? Certainly has a message to challenge today's generation to missions. Move my feet to follow after you. Lord, change the world and let it start with me. You know, as we listen through that, there's some real gut-wrenching truths in there. Empty people living in darkness, every minute, every hour. Hear the cry of desperation from 1 billion broken hearts. With a need so great, where do we even start? I think that's a good question today. Have you noticed that most mission presentations have a similar theme? We start off by showing incredible needs out there and then present the challenge to become part of the solution. And for the most part, our reactions are often the same. We're not in agreement, but then we don't let it start with me. I'm not called. When God calls me, then I'll go. And so we end up not going. We fail to recognise that it is a step of obedience to the command of the Great Commission. One of the primary functions of the church is supposed to be missions and outreach. It's what Jesus was all about during his time here on earth. And as he ascended to heaven, that was the last words on his lips. It's a deliberate introduction for us at the beginning of our church age. So why aren't we doing it? There's a lot of reasons, and boiled down, many of them are excuses. Excuses of what I want to do rather than what God would have me do. But aside from excuses, let's look this morning at one of the big reasons that stops so many people becoming involved in missions. Fear. Fear as real as a brick wall. And that stops us from going to where God would have us going. It's an age-old problem. Remember the nation of Israel after God delivered them from Israel, and then they arrived there at Kadesh Barnea. They sent out the 12 spies to go and check out the land. You know the story, we've just heard it again. 40 days of exploring, and then they returned with the proof that it was a great land with the fruit that they brought back. But then guess what? Fear, their brick wall. And here's their report again, Numbers 13:28. The people living there are powerful, and their towns are large and fortified. We even saw giants there, the descendants of Anak. And in verse 31, we can't go up against them. They're stronger than we are. So they spread this bad report about the land among the Israelites. The land we travelled through and explored will devour anyone who goes to live there. All the people we saw were huge. We even saw giants there, the descendants of Anak. Next to them, we felt like grasshoppers. So there was giants in the land. Was that true? Apparently it was. Caleb never disagreed. Let's go at once to take the land, he said. We can certainly conquer it. See, he would have disagreed if it wasn't true to support his case. The giants were there. But he was more interested in trusting God to get on with the task. It didn't matter that there were giants, the descendants of Anak. And that always makes me smile because we learned the Cebuano language when we lived in the Philippines. And in Cebuano, Anak means child. So Caleb's attitude here is, come on guys, with God, this will be like knocking kids out on the playground. It's ours for the taking. But no, people listened to human persuasion rather than godly expectation, and fear blocked them out from doing what God promised was theirs. It's the same with a career in missions. We add in a whole lot of other fears like leaving family and friends or leaving the source of a known income. And then the job to go out into all the world to make disciples, that has to be by some kind of miracle from God to catapult us out there. We've lost the God said it, I'll do it kind of thinking that used to characterise many Christians from bygone days. For Israel, fear was just the starting point of unbelief. And then that unbelief, feeding on fear, quickly paralysed them from doing what God had told them to do. Israel's was an incredible unbelief when we consider what God had repeatedly, his unwavering promise all through Scripture. A sworn promise to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, to Moses. And then Moses passed this on to all of Israel on several occasions. Even the fifth commandment given just a few weeks before this happened, before the spies went out, this views the promise as an accomplished event. Honour your father and your mother so that you may, what? Live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. See that promise, on top of how they had seen God bring the plagues on Egypt, how he had crossed them through the Red Sea, and then the many wonders and God's great provision that he had continually demonstrated over the last 18 months or so. They of all humanity had no reason for fear and disbelief. Incredibly, that all seemed forgotten once just 10 of them came and grizzled about a few giants. Are we that much different? Does fear of seeming odd among our peers stop us sharing our gospel message? Does the loss of our ability to provide for ourselves, does that rob us from trusting the Lord to supply for us in a foreign mission field? You know, we all have our giants. Look at the giant of secularism that the church faces today. The giants of atheism, evolution, gender ideology. They're all very real giants for us. And today, being a missions emphasis, it's good for us to look at the giants facing missions where we really do look like grasshoppers in their sight. How about these four? Animism, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism. They are huge giants that are everywhere around the world in missions. To see something of just how big this all really is, let's just take a look at the Hindu giant. To start with, we cannot separate it from its main centre in India. Interestingly, India was one of the first countries that our founders, ethnos founders, started working in back in the 1940s. It's a country with probably some of the most intense mission input by countless missionaries and countless organisations over an incredible time period. Even with all of this, the statistics are still absolutely mind-boggling. India is home to over 1.2 billion people. That population equals all of the United States, all of Indonesia, all of Brazil, all of Pakistan, all of Bangladesh, and all of Japan. That is a massive country, and with that, the issues are absolutely staggering. Here's some of the issues. By 2028, the population of India will surpass China. It will equal around about a sixth of the world's population. It is the most ethnically diverse nation in the world, with more than 2,500 distinct people groups. It has more human needs than any other nation. The staggering needs of India's children are unrivaled in any other country. It's a country with the greatest number of unreached individuals. Individuals coming out of around 1,500 entire people groups that have not been reached with the gospel, nor do they have access to it. There's whole language groups where there is no evangelical church position to reach them, and there's no Christians living among them who could reach them. And here's some of the reasons. India has around 780 languages. They use 86 different scripts. And here's the 9 most prominent scripts that are used, all of them different from each other. Now, when you're learning another language, it's hard enough to learn it without throwing in a script. And then that the neighbouring language uses a different script altogether. If that's not challenging enough, let's throw in the paralysing caste system that holds the culture hostage. The few lucky pure ones at the top, and then as you descend each lower level, they're treated as more polluted to the bottom, where most people are who are considered as the untouchables, the Dalits. They're considered worthless, they get the worst jobs and the worst treatment by society. They are outcast. There's no room for crossing between the castes. What you were born into is it. The only hope is that you might get reincarnated enough times to finally reach oneness if you live to perfection in your present caste. See, they're stuck in life, in that for life. It's a trap of the devil. Hinduism is the oldest living religion that was formed somewhere between the days of Abraham and Moses. And through it, Satan has deceived masses of people into believing that this is the way to oneness with God, by meditation and worship through an unbelievable amount of images of people and animals. It's a facade that this master deceiver who is behind them, that filthy rat, the devil, and notice there's actually a rat there. Satan has done well to draw mankind away from the true God through the Hindu religion, and he's smart enough to have invented other alternatives like Buddhism, Islam, animism, into our culture, secularism, atheism. It's a broad appeal to whatever an unregenerate human mind wants to believe. No matter what that giant is, we Christians have the only message of life and freedom through Jesus Christ for them. We know it inside out, don't we, that Jesus died on the cross in our place to bring us back into a relationship with the Father, cancelling out that sin problem that we are all born with. All when we were God's enemies, we were reconciled to him through the death of his Son. What kind of a love is that? It's far different to the demands that one is expected to follow that can never be reached in any other belief system. Today we just dug a little into Hinduism. We could have looked at any of the others, giants like animism, Buddhism, Islam, or into our culture, secularism or atheism. They are all a satanic deception that keeps people from knowing God. It's a deception that in our culture, to tolerate anything except what is perceived as the narrow position that we hold to as Christians. Jesus himself said it in Matthew 7:14, "Small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it." And then he defined that in John 14:6 when he said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." It is a narrow opening. And so it's no wonder that those outside of a Christian worldview have such an intolerance to what challenges their inherited belief. It can cost us as Christians our popularity or our jobs, and things can get pretty hostile. And so it's no wonder that fear kicks in and we end up saying the same thing that the 10 spies said. We can't go up against them. They are stronger than we are. But where's our faith? Have we so quickly forgotten that Scripture teaches us, Ephesians 3:20, that it's all about him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us? That's the same faith that David had when he got out there and slew his giant. So the question for us this morning is, are we willing to grow in our faith to overcome our fears and slay our giants? See, faith is like a muscle. It has to be exercised to be good and healthy. The more that our faith gets exercised, the stronger it gets. And the stronger it gets, the less fear will feature. Faith looks beyond what we can do to what God can do. And that's why we saw Caleb was willing to breach this wall of fear when he said, we should go up and take possession of the land. We can certainly do it. So what's the key to faith like this? It's an act of the will. It's an act that will make a decision to act based on who God is, and then in obedience to his leading. But it takes that mental choice of, okay, God. As an example, years ago when Judy and I and our family, we had finished our missionary training, we knew that the Lord wanted us to go to the Philippines, even though we didn't have the funds to get there. We had to make that defining decision point, okay, God, we're going to go and we're going to trust you for our airfares. It was after that choice was made, just within hours, that we got a phone call from our home church and said, a sum of money has come in for you. Where do you want it? And you got it. It was the exact amount that we needed to get there. And I could tell you story after story of how we have seen how God is faithful to provide what we need to do when we're doing his work. Any of us can expect to see God's provision if we step out in faith doing what he's asked us to do. And that's why William Carey could say, expect great things from God, attempt great things for God. Yet again this morning, we have seen incredible needs in mission. We're seeing mind-blowing statistics. We're seeing giants that make us look like grasshoppers. We have the command in each of the Gospels, and the song we heard said, you've given us the orders, there's a place for everyone. Then comes that choice to say to God, here's my life, my gifts, my education, my skills, everything I've got, my future, let it start with me. Use me however you want to get the gospel out to those who have never heard it. Help me to overcome the fear of sharing my faith here in New Zealand, or wherever you want me to go, whatever you want me to do, for as long as it takes, I'll do it. Would we say that to God this morning? We might think that, well, I'm not the evangelist type. I'm not that gutsy confrontationalist that can just bowl up to a stranger and share my faith. Or we're just not wired to be a Bible teacher, missionary kind of guy. But here's the good news. Missions has so many other roles that fit the majority of people who are not wired like that. Roles that most people already have and skilled in, like teachers in one of our schools, IT people, business managers, centre managers, accountants, doctors, nurses, dentists, all kinds of professions that we already have. And they are needed to take the gospel, especially in what we've seen today, countries like India, where their profession can be the bridge to get in where a traditional missionary is no longer able to go. Tradespeople are desperately needed in countries like Papua New Guinea. Any of these roles that we've talked about are needed to support those who are the Bible teacher, the linguist, the literacy teacher, the Bible translators. So how good is that? The skills that we have and how we are wired can equally be used by God in reaching the unreached. We might think, well, all of this is a big commitment to make. I don't know if I'm ready for something like that. You know what? This is not a big commitment. This is the essence of what it means to be a Christian in the first place. If anyone would come after me, Jesus says anyone, so he's talking about true discipleship. If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. So that's talking about dying to our plans, preferences, our dreams, dying to a life we could have to live the life we should have. That's what it means to be a follower of Jesus in the first place. It doesn't mean that we have to have it all sorted out before we go. It's okay to wonder, just like we heard in that song, with a need so great, where do we even start? Well, you could talk to us. Our organisation invests a lot into helping people find where to start. We have extensive training. We have short-term on-field opportunities, and we even offer a short overseas taste of what this all looks like. Even during this COVID brick wall that we're facing, we can still help people get started. There will always be that fear of the unknown or of survival, but we have our commander's backup. Surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age. It's an impossible task, but God with us. And if we are looking for it, we will find that breach in the wall to let any of us who are willing to get on out there and take down those giants. So which one of those 12 spies do we see ourselves as this morning? By our interest or our involvement or our support of mission and outreach, are we living out like Joshua and Caleb? Let's go at once to take the land. We can certainly conquer it. Could we rise above the fear of popularity that caused a whole nation to miss the chance to take the land? Are we willing to walk out there into the harvest field, regardless of whether it was a jungle in Indonesia or a crowded city in India, or even if it's here locally around us in New Zealand? Wherever we find ourselves, let us not be like the 10 unbelieving spies. Let us have a willing heart that turns us all around and says, can it start with me? To close, I mentioned before that we had a short overseas taste to show what it's like to go out against these giants. Hopefully, by next year, COVID may have settled down enough that we can resume what we call our interface program. There's cards for it on the back table. This is a fantastic opportunity designed for young people or those who are young at heart to see firsthand how they could fit into long-term missions. So this will be next year, June, July. Here's a preview of what this is like, and thank you for having us here this morning.
Hi, I'm Stephanie, and I'm a teacher in Papua New Guinea. You may have heard about the Interface short-term missions program held here in Papua New Guinea and run by Ethnos New Zealand and our global partners. It is designed to show young adults why we need long-term missionaries and gives them a taste of what it's like to stick it out till the job's done.
From what I've seen at Interface, they give you a really good training and foundation so that if missions, tribal missions is what God calls you into, then they fully prepare anyone.
Interface is a 6-week tertiary level course in church planting amongst ethnic people groups. It includes time in the classroom learning the principles of tribal church planting, how to learn an unwritten language, courses in translation principles, as well as classes on finances, support roles, and cultural awareness.
We learned how to learn an unwritten language. When I was seeing how the missionaries were talking to the nationals, I was so surprised because it was just the same and they learned how to speak it. And when we learned it in class, we first had phonetics. And it was quite difficult to get all the sounds, but at the same time I really enjoyed it. And I love to see their culture at the same time and see how they live.
There are classes in Togpisen and plenty of opportunities to practice with national language helpers. The Bible is taught chronologically, the same way it is first presented by missionaries to the people groups they're working with.
The chronological teaching has been really amazing when they put it all together in order and show the mainstream and the main point that is all pointing to Christ all throughout the Bible. It's just been really cool to see it out like that.
The climax and highlight of the trip is the visit to a tribal location to see a young church plant. A week is spent with new believers, hearing their stories, worshipping with them, and just experiencing life in a remote tribal village.
The missionaries were telling us about how the fear just gave them, like pushing them down, the fear that they have from all the spirits. Jesus just broke those chains, and this is just so amazing to see that they are free, and it was just an eye-opener for me.
Inspiring for me to be able to see the believers out there, the mature church that is growing out at Hewa, and just the passion that the believers have for God, and just to see that this really works.
And they've got such a heart for evangelism themselves. They want to reach out to the other tribes and let them have the light as well.
What an intense yet impacting week that is. Experiencing interface may show you that you have an aptitude for languages, a heart to build relationships with people from a different culture, or show you how you could fill a vital support role. If God has given you an interest in missions, why not come experience firsthand church planting in some of the most isolated places in the world?
It's all just been amazing, from the teaching and meeting all the different missionaries who live on the field and hearing their stories, and then going on the side trip and seeing how it actually plays out in real life. And yeah, just everything has been amazing, even the food.
Come and participate in Interface. You won't go home the same.